Hey, I just finished a 60-hour fast. It's the longest I've ever gone without eating in my life, and I want to tell you how it went. Now, just a little bit about my backstory in case you're not familiar with it. I struggled with obesity for over 25 years, and I lost the same 75 pounds on three separate occasions. So that means that twice I lost the weight only to gain it back again, usually pretty quickly. But at age 34, I lost the weight again. I've now kept it off for coming up on 6 years, and it really is the greatest achievement of my life. But one of the reasons that I had these struggles with my weight for so long was because of my relationship with food and emotional eating, right? The reason that we often eat is because it feels good. If you're in a low emotional state, well, it can feel good to eat foods, especially foods that are high in sugar, high in fat, these highly processed foods that, so many people eat that are devoid of nutrients. And, these don't satiate us in a meaningful way, and these don't support our long-term health in any meaningful way. They just provide a short-term relief and escape from the emotional kind of turmoil that we are in. And then, this can become a learned sort of habitual behavior that we engage in, where, if we're in a chronic low emotional state, or if we just eat these certain way for however long, this is just kind of what we do, and we don't necessarily examine these sort of unconscious behaviors that we engage in, and this can lead to a negative relationship with food, and we eat in a way that doesn't support our health, doesn't support our energy, and doesn't make us feel good in either the short term or in the long run. And one of the things I've done to turn my life around was to fix my relationship with food. And one of the things that's really done that over these last couple of years has been doing fasts. Now, I've done 3 fasts now, counting the one that I just finished. In 2021, November, I did a 36-hour fast, and then in January or February 2022, I did a 40-hour fast, and now I've done a 60-hour fast. And before I did these fasts, I never would have thought that I could have gone a whole day or 2 days without eating. I knew theoretically it was possible. Humans can live for weeks or even months without food. But I didn't know that I could live for that long without it, because, I knew how I was, and especially when I was in low energy states, I would get really hangry. And, for years, if I went a few hours without eating, I would start to get hangry. My mood would drop. It would consume me, the hunger. And to think that I could, forego eating for an entire day, I would just envision my day being absolute misery and hell having to do that. But as I fasted, and as I experimented a little bit with intermittent fasting, in the years prior to doing a longer extended fast, I came to realize that hunger doesn't work the way that I thought it did, particularly now that I'm much healthier generally and I have a higher baseline emotional state, and that hunger doesn't build and build and build. Hunger comes and goes in waves, right? So if you get hungry at one point, well, that doesn't mean that the hunger is going to keep building and building until the point where it is unbearable and you just have to eat. I'm sure at a certain point you might get to that level, but after a day or two or maybe even a week of not eating, you're not going to be at that point. What you need to do is just sort of devote your attention and energy elsewhere, right? Take your mind off the fact that you're hungry, stop focusing your attention on it, and then that hunger will dissipate and you won't really even notice it. And what I found during these fasts is that sometimes the first few hours of the fast can be the most challenging. And that was the case for me in my 60-hour fast that I just completed. I would say that that first morning was probably the most challenging, just because I have a certain routine of the things that I eat. And, mentally and physically, I'm accustomed to getting these certain inputs at certain times, and I wasn't getting that, but, it's no big deal, right? And especially, I've done a lot of hard things at this point in my life. So, going some hours without food's not really that hard compared to some of the other stuff I've done. So I just kind of put it out of my mind and, ignored it to the best of my ability. And what I found is that, that hunger dissipates. It comes in waves. So it builds and then it dissipates and it recedes, and then you don't even notice it. And after a few hours, after maybe half a day of this, I started to feel really good, and just energetic and light, and just it feels so good to get a break from eating and digestion and all these things that we're just constantly doing. There's a reason that fasting has been a part of so many ancient cultures and traditions. It really is a gateway into a more spiritual experience from what I've experienced, because when I go without food, it does something to my mental process. And it lifts kind of a brain fog, I'd say. There's just like a baseline anxiety that I guess I feel most of the time, or some of the time. It's not crippling like it used to be, but when I don't eat and it just kind of goes away, I think that might be to some extent triggered by sugar or carbohydrates. It's something I'm curious to play with in the weeks and months ahead, and to see if I could, make some dietary changes to kind of soothe some of this out. But going without food, it really is a rewarding experience for me. It makes me realize that I don't need this external thing to be me, right? I have more than enough calories. I have body fat. I'm gonna survive for a long time without food. So this isn't necessarily a physical issue at all. It is a mental issue, right? And it's how do you deal with these, cravings, these urges that come up, right? Are you in control of these urges and these cravings, or do they control you? And for much of my life, these urges and cravings controlled me. But now, I've done a lot of work, physical, mental, spiritual, and now I am in much more control over these urges, and I have the power to, just not indulge them. And I understand that they're going to go away, even if I am suffering. Well, suffering is a temporary state, and it too will pass. I've suffered many times in my life, both voluntarily and involuntarily, and every time I have suffered, it has gone away. And I'm not in that state right now. Obviously, I'm pretty happy and energetic, especially since I just ate. So that suffering passes, and it's something that I've learned through fasting, and just the ability to not have to eat, and it's empowering to realize that this food that I've been raised to think that I need to eat constantly. And I'm fortunate enough where I've never had to experience anything resembling real hunger in my life. I've always had food on the table. In fact, I've always had an abundance of food on the table. And it is empowering to realize that I don't need that, and I can go without that. And that to me is what the main benefit of fasting has been. It's given me a lot of strength that I've brought into other areas of my life. It's deepened my spiritual connection in ways, and while I'm fasted, it unlocks a creativity in me, or I'm able to kind of access a flow state. Yesterday, I sat down to write, and the words just flowed through me in a way that they usually don't. And I don't think it's a coincidence that it happened on my second day of not eating. And I felt like I could have kept going on and kept going forward, but I set out to do 60 hours. And I don't like to move the goalposts in the middle of something like this, right? If I set out to do something that I think is hard, while I'm in the middle of it, I don't like to make it even harder. I don't think that's fair to myself to do that, right? I challenge myself and I meet the challenge. It's not fair for me to then move the goalposts and say, oh, you have to do 72 hours. Oh, you have to do 96 hours. I set out to do something that I thought was going to be a challenge. I completed it. I got a lot of benefits out of it, and I am looking forward to doing another fast at some point in the relatively near future, probably longer than this one, maybe 72 or 96 hours. I haven't really decided yet. I'm also looking to incorporate a once weekly 24-hour fast into my lifestyle, just because I think that'll be helpful too, and I'll enjoy that. So this is what I have gotten out of fasting. If anybody has any questions or comments about fasts, that you may have experienced or your family may have experienced, well then please feel free to comment below, like and subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be posting more content on here soon, and I appreciate you all. Thanks for watching, and go out there and fast. Skip a day eating. It's not going to kill you. You will be stronger for having done it.